I texted Marcus while David was inside me, and everyone assumes cruelty. What they don't understand is my thumb moved before my brain could scream stop, and that message wasn't what you're thinking. Now I'm the girl thrown out at 3 a.m. in mismatched socks, the cautionary tale my friends whisper about when they think I can't hear. But the real stakes aren't my reputation. It's the restraining order I violated, the digital trail I left, and that David doesn't know Marcus has been watching my Instagram stories for 6 months. I'm going to tell you exactly what that text said and why I sent it. But first, you need to understand how I convinced myself I was the victim. The first time Marcus showed up in my People You May Know feed after the breakup, my hands shook so badly I dropped my phone on the subway tracks. That was 6 months before I met David, back when I was still sleeping with the lights on and jumping at shadows that looked like his silhouette. Marcus wasn't just an ex. He was the reason I changed my number 3 times, the reason I moved to a different borough, the reason I flinched when men raised their voices. So when his profile picture appeared, that same smug photo of him at his sister's wedding, the one where his arm was around my waist before he cropped me out, I felt the old familiar ice water pour down my spine. David found me 3 months after that. He was stable in a way that felt foreign, like drinking room temperature water after years of nothing but vodka burns. He remembered my coffee order, asked permission before touching me, and never once made me feel like I was taking up too much space. When he kissed me, I didn't taste violence waiting in the wings. I told him about Marcus on our 3rd date, watching his face carefully for the pity that usually followed. Instead, he just took my hand and said, "You don't have to carry that alone anymore." I wanted so badly for that to be true. The problem was that Marcus never really left. Not in the ways that counted. He stopped texting my actual phone after the last number change, sure, but he found me online. Little things at first, a like on an old photo from 2019, a view on my Instagram story despite us not following each other. I blocked 3 different accounts that were obviously him before I realized he was creating new ones faster than I could report them. By the time David and I were officially dating, I developed a compulsive habit of checking my viewer list, my heart hammering against my ribs every time I saw a blank profile circle. David noticed. Of course he noticed. He was the kind of person who remembered that I liked my eggs scrambled dry and that I always put my left sock on first. He'd watch me swipe through my phone with that focused intensity, my breath held until I'd confirmed Marcus hadn't viewed my latest story. "You okay?" He'd ask, and I'd plaster on a smile that felt like cracking glass. "Fine," I'd lie, "just work stuff." The first hint that I was losing my grip came 2 months in. I'd posted a photo of David and me at a farmer's market, his arm around my shoulders, both of us laughing at something off camera. Within an hour, Marcus had viewed it from an account with 0 posts and 17 followers. I deleted the photo. When David asked why it was gone, I mumbled something about bad lighting and changed the subject. But I took a screenshot first. Evidence, I told myself. For the restraining order I kept promising myself I'd file. The second hint was the nightmares. They'd tapered off after the move, but now they returned with surgical precision. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., David snoring softly beside me, and reach for my phone like it was a defibrillator. I'd scroll through Marcus's sister's Facebook still public, his mom's Twitter she posted about her gardenias, his coworker's Instagram team building drinks every Friday. I wasn't looking for him specifically. I was looking for proof he was still breathing, still existing in the same world as me, still a threat I could measure. The third hint was the day I called in sick to work because Marcus had posted a story from a coffee shop 3 blocks from my office. It was an innocent photo, his latte art, a book I didn't recognize, but my brain short-circuited. I spent 8 hours crouched by my window, peeking through the blinds like a meth-addled spy, convinced he'd materialize on my doorstep. When David came over that evening, I was still in my pajamas, unwashed, vibrating with paranoia. "You look tired," he said, kissing my forehead. "Everything okay? Just a migraine," I whispered, letting him lead me to the couch. I didn't mention that I'd reported Marcus's account 3 times that day, or that I'd drafted a cease and desist letter in my notes app that I knew I'd never send. The small decision that snowballed happened on a Tuesday. David was in the shower, singing off-key to some indie band I'd introduced him to. My phone buzzed. Not a text, a notification from Instagram. Marcus had liked my photo from 3 weeks ago, the one of my cat sleeping in a sunbeam. It was the first time he'd interacted with my content directly, not just viewed it. My finger hovered over the block button. Instead, I screenshotted it. Then I did something I still can't explain. I opened my DMs and typed, "Why are you doing this?" I deleted it without sending. But the draft stayed in my inbox, a loaded gun I kept polishing. David came out of the shower, towel around his waist, water droplets tracing his collarbone. "What are you smiling at?" he asked, and I realized I was grinning at my phone like it had told me a secret. "Nothing," I said, locking the screen, "just a meme." That night, while David slept soundly beside me, I created a folder in my Photos app labeled Evidence. I dropped 17 screenshots into it. Proof, I told myself as my eyes burned from screen glow. I'm building a case. I'm being smart. I'm not obsessed. I was so certain I was the protagonist of this story. The first truly questionable decision came a week later. Marcus posted a photo of his new girlfriend, some blonde woman with a ski-slope nose and a smile that hadn't been damaged yet. I zoomed in on her face, searching for the hollowness I knew would come later. Then I did something that made my stomach turn. I created a fake Instagram account to view her profile, just to see if she posted about him, just to know if she was safe. She wasn't. I could tell by the way she angled her body away from the camera in every photo he was in, by the tightness around her eyes. I knew that look. I'd worn it for 2 years. I told myself I was checking on her, that it was almost noble, that I was making sure another woman didn't end up like me, checking her viewer list at 2 a.m., jumping at shadows. I didn't tell David about the fake account. I didn't tell him that I'd memorized her posting schedule, that I knew she went to yoga on Tuesdays and posted about it every time. The second questionable decision was the day I commented on her photo. Not with words, with an emoji, a simple eye symbol. She deleted it within minutes, but I'd seen the notification. I'd made contact. I'd reached across the digital void and touched someone else's life without their consent. The rush was sickening and electric. I told myself it was a warning. That I was sending a message she could decode later, when the bruises started. I was delusional enough to believe I was helping. The third questionable decision was the lie. David had started mentioning a friend of a friend who worked in cybersecurity, someone who could help with my situation. He was trying to be kind, to fix something he didn't understand. I could set up a meeting. He offered over dinner one night, his hand resting on my knee under the table. Get some professional advice about protecting your privacy. I felt the trap snap shut. If I said yes, they'd look into my accounts. They'd see the fake profile, the screenshots, the folder labeled Evidence that was starting to look more like a shrine. They'd know I wasn't a victim, I was a participant. I already filed the restraining order. I heard myself say, the lie sliding out smooth as butter. It's being processed. I didn't want to worry you. David's face lit up with relief. That's amazing. When did you do that? Last week. I squeezed his hand, my palm slick with sweat. My lawyer says it's pretty straightforward since I have all the documentation. The first small consequence I dismissed came the next morning. Marcus's girlfriend, her name was Emily, I'd learned from her profile, posted a story that said, "If you're the person leaving weird comments, please stop. It's creepy." I blocked the fake account immediately, my heart hammering. But I also felt a perverse satisfaction. She knew. She was aware. I was in her head now, just like Marcus was in mine. I told myself it was a necessary evil. That sometimes you had to become the monster to fight the monster. I was so deep in my own mythology, I couldn't see the truth. I'd become exactly what I feared, just with different pronouns. The dramatic irony was that while I was building my case against Marcus, I was creating a parallel case against myself. Every screenshot, every fake account, every lie was another piece of evidence that I was the aggressor. But I couldn't see it. I was too busy being the hero of my own tragedy. David started asking more direct questions. "Have you heard from your lawyer?" he'd ask, and I'd nod, manufacturing details about court dates that didn't exist. "What did the police say about the Instagram harassment?" He'd probe, and I'd spin tales of detectives who were building a pattern of behavior. I was so fluent in my own fiction I almost believed it. The first external person who questioned my behavior was my best friend Lara. We'd been friends since college, back when I was still whole. She'd held me through the Marcus breakup, seen the bruises that weren't always physical. But she'd also seen me rebuild, and she knew my patterns better than anyone. We met for coffee on a Saturday, and within 5 minutes she was giving me that look, the one that said she saw through my performance. "You're checking your phone a lot," she observed, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness. "Like compulsively." "Work's been crazy," I deflected, not meeting her eyes. "Bullshit." Lara leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You've got that look. The one you had right before you moved apartments the first time. What's going on?" I should have told her. I should have opened my mouth and let the truth pour out. I'm losing my mind, I'm obsessed, I've become the thing I hate. Instead, I gave her a carefully curated version. Marcus has been viewing my stories. From fake accounts, I'm documenting it. Her face softened with sympathy. Have you talked to David about it? He knows. The lie came easier each time. He's been really supportive. Good. Lara sat back, but her eyes stayed sharp. Because you have a tendency to fixate, and I don't want to see you spiral again. I nodded, the perfect picture of a woman taking advice. But inside, I was already planning my next move. If she was suspicious, others would be too. I needed to accelerate my plan. What plan? Even I didn't know anymore. The line between protecting myself and attacking him had blurred into something unrecognizable. The truth bomb I was sitting on was this: Marcus hadn't contacted me in months. Not really. The likes, the views, the fake accounts, they were all real, but they were reactive. I'd been poking the bear for weeks, leaving digital breadcrumbs that would lead him back to me. A like on his sister's photo from 3 years ago. A view of his story from an account with my middle name as the handle. I'd been waving red flags at a bull and calling it self-defense. But I couldn't admit that. Not to Lara, not to David, not to myself. The first significant relationship damage came from a source I didn't expect. David's sister, Rachel, had always been cool but distant with me. She was protective of her younger brother, and I'd felt her sizing me up at family dinners, trying to determine if I was worthy of him. I'd always smiled wider, laughed harder, tried to seem uncomplicated and easy. She added me on Facebook after David posted a photo of us at his niece's birthday party. I accepted without thinking, not realizing I'd left my privacy settings wide open. She could see everything. Every post, every photo, every comment, including the ones from my fake account on Emily's profile. She didn't say anything at first. Just a quiet removal from her friends list 3 days later. When David mentioned it casually, "Hey, did you unfriend Rachel?" I felt the floor drop out from under me. I must have done it by accident, I stammered, pulling out my phone to show him. See, I probably hit the button when I was scrolling. David nodded, but something shifted in his expression. A tiny crack in the trust I'd been carefully building. She's just weird about social media, he said, but his voice had lost its usual warmth. Don't worry about it. I worried about it. I worried so much I created another fake account that night, this one designed to look like a bot, and used it to send Rachel a friend request. Just to see if she'd accept. Just to know if she was talking about me. She didn't accept. She also posted a status update that said, if you're going to stalk someone, maybe don't use an account with your actual middle name in the handle. I blocked that account too, my face burning with shame and fury. She knew. She'd figured it out. And now she was warning me. The defensive justification I told myself was that she was overreacting, that she didn't understand the context, that I was just being careful, just protecting myself, just doing what any woman in my position would do. I wasn't stalking. I was investigating. The words tasted like ash even as I thought them. The second external person to question me was David himself, though he didn't know he was doing it. He'd started asking about my day with a new intensity, his eyes scanning my face for micro-expressions I couldn't control. What did you do today? Became what did you do online today, disguised as casual conversation. Not much, I'd say, and he'd nod, but his jaw would tighten in a way that told me he knew I was lying. He was too smart not to see it. The man who remembered how I took my coffee and which side of the bed I preferred wasn't going to miss the fact that I hadn't looked him in the eye during dinner in weeks. The "but you don't understand" justification was locked and loaded, waiting for the moment he'd call me out. You don't understand what he did to me. You don't understand what it's like to be watched. You don't understand that I'm the victim here. I was so ready to be misunderstood. It was easier than being honest. The hidden action I'd taken earlier, the one that would reframe everything, was simple and devastating. 3 weeks before I sent that text, I'd driven by Marcus's house. Not because I had any reason to be in that neighborhood. Not because I was just passing by. I'd looked up his address through a reverse search on a property website, gotten in my car at 11 p.m., and cruised past his building 4 times, my headlights off, my heart racing with something that felt like power. I told myself it was reconnaissance. I was checking his security, seeing if he had cameras, making sure I knew what I was up against. What I was really doing was becoming the thing I feared most. I was becoming Marcus, and I couldn't stop. The escalation of consequences happened so gradually I barely noticed the shift. Marcus stopped viewing my stories. Emily made her account private. Rachel blocked me entirely, not just unfriended. My best friend Lara stopped returning my calls, her text responses growing shorter and more distant until they stopped altogether. But the biggest consequence was David. He didn't confront me, he didn't yell or accuse, he just withdrew. His texts became perfunctory. His touches became hesitant. He stopped asking about my day, stopped sharing details about his. We were still together, but I could feel him building a wall between us, brick by careful brick. I told myself it was because he was stressed at work, because his sister was going through something, because relationships had natural ebbs and flows. I told myself anything except the truth. He was seeing me clearly for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. The social dimension expanded when Emily posted a story that said, "To whoever keeps making fake accounts to watch my stories, I've reported you to Instagram, and I'm considering legal action." She didn't tag me. She didn't have to. I knew it was directed at me. I reported her story for harassment. The irony didn't even register. The failed attempt to make things right was pathetic in its desperation. I unblocked Lara and sent her a novel-length text explaining everything. How Marcus had been stalking me, how I was just trying to protect myself, how I was the victim in all of this. I hit send before I could read it back and see the lies layered with truth layered with more lies. She responded 6 hours later with a single sentence: "You need professional help." I blocked her again immediately, my face burning with shame that quickly curdled into rage. She was supposed to be on my side. She was supposed to understand. She was supposed to see me as the broken bird who needed protecting, not the predator who needed caging. I told myself she was a bad friend, that she'd never really understood trauma, that she was taking his side over mine. The justifications came so easily now they felt like breathing. The situation spiraled in a way I didn't anticipate. Marcus filed a harassment report against me, not a restraining order, just a formal complaint with Instagram, but it was enough. My account was flagged. My DMs were monitored. I got a warning message that said, "Your activity has been reported for violating our community guidelines." I was the one being reported. I was the one violating guidelines. The world had flipped upside down and I was still insisting I was right side up. My worst decision yet, though not the worst, not even close, was what I did next. I created a new email address, one that couldn't be traced back to me, and I used it to send an anonymous tip to Marcus's employer. I told them he'd been harassing his ex-girlfriend, that there was a pattern of abusive behavior, that they should be careful about who they promoted. I attached the screenshots I'd been collecting, the ones that showed his likes, his views, his digital footprints. I hit send and felt a surge of satisfaction so pure it was almost sexual. I was winning. I was fighting back. I was taking control. I didn't know then that Marcus's company was already investigating him for something unrelated, and my anonymous tip would be the final nail in his professional coffin. I didn't know they'd fire him within the week. I didn't know he'd suspect me immediately, even though I'd used a VPN and a fake name. I didn't know because I didn't care. I was too busy being the hero of my own revenge fantasy. The breadcrumb I dropped about the ultimate secret was small, almost imperceptible. I posted a photo of my morning coffee, my favorite mug, the one with the chip in the handle that David had tried to throw away 3 times. In the background, barely visible, was my laptop screen. If you zoomed in, if you knew what to look for, you could see the tabs I had open. One was for a reverse phone lookup site. Another was for a background check service. The third was Marcus's sister's public Facebook page. I didn't think anyone would notice. I was wrong. Rachel saw it. She screenshot it and sent it to David with a message that said, "I think you need to talk to her about this." David didn't confront me right away. He waited 2 days, watching me, gathering his own evidence. He became quiet in a way that was different from his previous withdrawal. This was active silence, the kind that precedes a storm. I felt it building, but I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, that the anxiety was making me see threats where there were none. The truth was that the threats were real, but they were all coming from me. The breaking point stretched across 5 scenes that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. In the first, David sat me down on our couch, the beige one we'd picked out together, the one that had survived my red wine spills and his nacho cheese fingerprints, and he said, "We need to talk about Marcus." I immediately went on the defensive. I know he's been viewing my stories, but I'm documenting everything. My lawyer says we have a strong case. David's face did something complicated. "You have a lawyer?" "Of course I have a lawyer." The lie was so smooth it scared me. "I told you I filed the restraining order. You told me it was being processed." His voice was careful, measured. "You said you didn't want me to worry." "Well, it's processed now." I met his eyes, challenging him to call me a liar. "I got the confirmation last week." The second scene was later that night, after he'd gone to bed and I was still awake, scrolling through Emily's profile on my fake account. She'd posted a new photo with Marcus, both of them smiling at what looked like a work function. I zoomed in on his face, searching for signs of stress of the professional fallout I'd caused. He looked tired maybe, a little thinner, good. I double-tapped the photo before I could stop myself. My fake account didn't have a profile picture, but it had a name, Sarah Miller, a boring name, a forgettable name. I watched as Emily's profile showed that Sarah Miller had liked her photo. I unliked it 30 seconds later, but the damage was done. Instagram sends notifications for likes. She'd seen it. She'd wonder who Sarah Miller was. She'd probably mention it to Marcus. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was just being thorough, that I needed to know if they were happy, if my revenge was working, if I was winning. The third scene was the public meltdown. David had dragged me to his office holiday party, something I'd been dreading for weeks. Too many people, too many questions, too many opportunities for me to slip up. I'd had 3 glasses of wine in quick succession, trying to numb the anxiety that was making my hands shake. His coworker, a woman named Jenna with a loud laugh and a tendency to touch people's arms when she talked, asked me what I did for work. I told her I was in marketing. She asked if I liked it. I said it was fine. She asked if David and I had any holiday plans. Probably just staying in, I said, my smile feeling like a grimace, avoiding my ex. The table went quiet. David's boss, a man named Richard with a beard that didn't quite suit him, leaned forward. Your ex. She's been stalking me online, I heard myself say, the wine loosening my tongue in the worst possible way. Viewing my stories from fake accounts. It's been really stressful. David's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing hard enough to bruise. Maybe we should get some air, he murmured, but I was on a roll now, the truth and lies mixing into a toxic cocktail I couldn't stop drinking. He's been doing it for months, I continued, my voice rising. I had to file a restraining order. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Jenna's smile had frozen on her face. Richard looked at David with an expression I couldn't read. The entire table was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. David stood, pulling me up with him. We're going to head home, he announced, his voice tight. She's not feeling well. The fourth scene was the near confession. David drove us home in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we got inside, he turned to me and said, we need to talk about what's really going on. I could have told him then. I could have opened my mouth and let the truth spill out. I'm not okay, I'm obsessed. I've been lying to you about everything, I need help. Instead, I said, I think I'm having a nervous breakdown. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. It was a deflection, a way to make him comfort me instead of confronting me, and it worked. He softened immediately, pulling me into his arms, murmuring that we'd get me help, that everything would be okay. I let him hold me while I stared at my phone over his shoulder, checking to see if Emily had posted about the Sarah Miller incident. She hadn't. The fifth scene was the text. We were in bed, David's body curled around mine, his breathing deep and even. He'd fallen asleep after we'd had sex, something that had become increasingly rare as my anxiety drove a wedge between us. But tonight, for whatever reason, he'd wanted me. And I'd let him, even though my mind was a million miles away, calculating my next move against Marcus. My phone buzzed, a notification from Instagram. Marcus had posted a story. I opened it without thinking, my body going rigid as I watched him pan his camera across what looked like a new apartment. He'd moved. He'd left the neighborhood I'd been monitoring. He'd escaped my surveillance. The rage that flooded through me was so pure it felt holy. How dare he move on? How dare he leave? How dare he stop being the villain in my story? I typed out a message without thinking. You can't just leave, I wrote, my thumbs moving automatically. You don't get to start over. I sent it before I could stop myself, to Marcus. While David was still inside me, his breath warm against my neck, his arm heavy across my waist. The notification showed delivered. Read. Marcus replied immediately, what the fuck? I deleted the conversation, my heart hammering so hard I was sure David could feel it. But he was asleep, oblivious, his trust in me so complete he couldn't imagine I'd do something so unforgivable while he was still inside me. I told myself it didn't count. That it was just a moment of weakness, that it didn't mean anything. I was so good at lying to myself, I almost believed it. The major confrontation came at 2:47 a.m., according to my phone log. David had woken up to use the bathroom, and when he came back, he picked up my phone from the nightstand where I'd left it. He'd never been the type to snoop. He trusted me. But something, maybe intuition, maybe divine intervention, made him unlock it. He saw the deleted conversation. Instagram keeps deleted messages in a hidden folder for 24 hours. He read what I'd sent to Marcus. He read Marcus's reply. He saw the timestamp, 3:17 p.m., the exact moment we'd been having sex. He didn't yell, he didn't throw things. He just stood there, my phone in his hand, his face a mask of something I couldn't name. Explain, he said, his voice so quiet it was worse than shouting. I sat up, pulling the sheet around me, suddenly aware of my nakedness in a way I hadn't been before. It's not what it looks like. That's what guilty people say. He tossed the phone onto the bed. It landed face up, the screen still showing the conversation. You texted your ex while we were having sex. There's no context that makes that okay. I was trying to get closure, I lied, the words coming automatically. I wanted to tell him to leave me alone once and for all. While I was inside you. David's voice cracked on the last word. You were thinking about him while you were with me. It wasn't like that. But it was exactly like that, and we both knew it. He started getting dressed, his movements jerky and mechanical. Get out, David, get out. He didn't look at me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear your voice. I want you out of my apartment, out of my life, gone. I started to cry, the tears hot and real. Please let me explain, you've been explaining for months. He turned to me then, and his eyes were wet too. And I just realized I don't believe a single word you say. My support system crumbled in the space of a single night. I called Lara from the sidewalk outside David's building, my clothes thrown on haphazardly, my phone at 3 battery. She didn't answer. I texted her, David broke up with me. Can I come over? Her reply came 3 minutes later, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. You need professional help and I can't be your therapist. Goodbye. She blocked me before I could respond. I tried my other friends, the ones I'd known for years, the ones who'd seen me through the Marcus breakup. One by one, they either didn't answer or responded with variations of I think you should talk to someone before blocking my number. The only person who responded was my mother, who texted back, come home. We'll figure this out. I was 30 years old, and I was going home to my mother because I'd burned every other bridge to ash. The direct question I had to answer or deflect came from David's sister Rachel. She found me outside his building, sitting on the curb, waiting for an Uber that seemed to be taking forever. She'd obviously been called, obviously been told everything. Did you ever file that restraining order? She asked, her voice cold and clear as winter glass. I looked up at her, my face streaked with tears and mascara, and I couldn't lie anymore. No. Did Marcus ever actually threaten you? I opened my mouth to say yes, to tell her about the likes, the views, the fake accounts. But the words died in my throat. Not exactly. Did you stalk him? She pressed, her arms crossed, her body language screaming disgust. I nodded just once, a tiny movement that felt like admitting to murder. You're sick, she said, not unkindly, just factually. You need help. Then she went inside, leaving me alone on the sidewalk with my shattered life. The setup for the biggest revelation came when my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Marcus had posted on his story. I almost didn't look, but self-destruction is a hard habit to break. It was a screenshot of an email. A formal complaint from his former employer, the one I'd anonymously reported him to. The email said the investigation had been closed, that the accusations were unfounded, that they were considering legal action against whoever had filed the false report. Marcus had captioned it "Karma's a bitch." I knew, with a certainty that made my bones ache, that he knew it was me. He might not have proof, but he knew. And he was telling me that the game was over, I'd lost. The worst truth, the one I'd been hiding from everyone including myself, was this: there was no restraining order. There never had been. I'd started the application process, filled out the forms, even spoken to a lawyer once. But when they'd asked for evidence, when they'd looked at my screenshots, they'd seen what I couldn't, that I was the one initiating contact as much as he was responding to it. The lawyer had called me back and said, gently, I think you need to consider whether you're seeking protection or revenge. I'd hung up on him and never called back. But I'd told everyone, David, Lara, my mother, even the barista at my coffee shop who'd asked why I seemed stressed, that the order was being processed. It was my get-out-of-jail-free card, my excuse for my behavior, my shield against accountability. The full confession began when David texted me 3 days after he'd thrown me out. Not to reconcile, to ask, point blank, did you ever actually file a restraining order against Marcus? I stared at the text for 20 minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could lie. I could say it was still being processed, that the legal system was slow, that I'd show him the paperwork eventually. Instead, I typed no. His reply was immediate. Did he ever actually stalk you, or were you stalking him? I typed out the truth in fragments, each word a shard of glass I was forcing down my own throat. At first, he just viewed my stories. Then I started checking his profiles. Then I created fake accounts. Then I drove by his house. Then I reported him to his job. Then I texted him while you were inside me because I was angry he'd moved apartments and I couldn't watch him anymore. The damning detail was the timeline. I'd been the aggressor for months, not the victim. I'd created the narrative where I was being stalked because it was easier than admitting I was the one who couldn't let go. Marcus had moved on. I never had. The most damning detail, the one that changed everything, was this: I'd texted him during sex not because I was thinking about him, but because I was trying to prove to myself that I could still affect him. That even while another man was inside me, I had power over the one who'd hurt me. It wasn't about sex or desire. It was about control. I'd used David's body as a weapon against Marcus. I'd used his trust as a shield for my obsession. I'd used his kindness as camouflage for my cruelty. When David read my confession, he didn't respond for 3 hours. Then he sent a single text: "You're a monster." He wasn't wrong. The immediate fallout was nuclear. Marcus filed a counter-complaint against me for harassment, backed by the evidence I'd so helpfully provided in my months of obsession. The fake accounts, the anonymous tip, the harassing messages to his girlfriend, all of it was documented and timestamped. His lawyer sent me a cease and desist letter that made it clear I was one step away from criminal charges. MS. My name has engaged in a pattern of harassing behavior that has caused significant emotional distress to my client and his family. My family. As if he had a right to that word after what he'd done to me. But he wasn't the villain anymore. I was. The first major consequence of the revelation hit when my employer called me into HR. Someone, Rachel, I later learned, had sent them screenshots of my Instagram activity, the ones that showed me posting during work hours, the ones that hinted at my obsessive behavior. They didn't fire me outright. They put me on administrative leave while they investigated my online conduct. I was escorted out of the building by security, my desk items in a cardboard box, my coworkers staring at me like I was contagious. The final shoe dropped when my mother, who'd been letting me stay in her guest room, found the folder on my laptop labeled evidence. She didn't just find the screenshots. She found the timeline I'd created, the one that showed my stalking behavior in meticulous detail. She found the draft of the fake restraining order application. She found the background check I'd run on Marcus's new girlfriend. She sat me down at her kitchen table, her face pale and drawn, and said, "I think you need to leave." Even my own mother couldn't stand the sight of me. The concrete fallout spread across every area of my life like a toxic spill. I lost my job, not because I was fired, but because I couldn't face going back to an office where everyone knew I was crazy. I lost my apartment, because without a job I couldn't afford rent. I lost my friends because they'd all been David's friends first and they chose him. I lost my best friend because Lara had been right to cut me off. I lost my reputation because in the age of screenshots, your sins are searchable. The relationship consequences were the most painful. David moved on within a month, dating a woman who worked in his building, someone who presumably didn't text her ex during sex. He posted a photo of them at a concert, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. It was the same pose we'd had in that farmer's market photo I'd deleted. He looked happier than he'd ever been with me. My reputation in our shared social circle was destroyed. I was the cautionary tale, the meme, the crazy ex story people told at parties. I saw a text conversation Lara posted on Instagram, carefully cropped to hide names, but I knew it was about me. That said, sometimes you think you know someone, and then they show you who they really are. She got 300 likes. The social media element was the final nail. I tried to create a new Instagram, a fresh start, but Instagram's algorithms are smarter than I gave them credit for. They suggested people you may know, and there was David, and Lara, and Rachel, and even Marcus. The platform I used to wage my war became a minefield of ghosts. I tried to go private, but it was too late. The internet never forgets, and my particular brand of crazy was well documented. My internal state was a funhouse mirror version of my external perception. Publicly, I was the villain, the stalker, the woman who'd fabricated a victim narrative to justify her obsession. Privately, I still felt like the wronged party, the woman who'd been driven to madness by a man who'd abused her. The cracks in my defensiveness started to show when I found myself typing "Am I the villain?" or the victim into Google at 2 a.m. The search results were full of psychology articles about trauma responses and personality disorders, but they all required a level of self-awareness I wasn't sure I possessed. The moment of genuine self-awareness broke through during a therapy session my mother had forced me to schedule. The therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a no bullshit demeanor, listened to my story, the sanitized version where I was still mostly the victim, and then asked, "But what was your role in all of this?" I started to give her my practice speech about trauma and fear and self-protection. She held up her hand. "No," she said gently. "What did you do, not what was done to you? What did you choose to do?" For the first time I couldn't answer. Because the truth was, I'd chosen all of it. Every lie, every fake account, every moment of surveillance. I'd chosen to become the monster. The current state of my life is this: I'm living in my mother's guest room, sleeping on a twin bed that creaks every time I roll over. I'm seeing a therapist twice a week, though I'm not sure I'm making progress. I deleted all my social media accounts. I haven't looked at Marcus's profiles in 47 days. I check the number every morning, like a sober chip. I got a job at a coffee shop where no one knows my name, let alone my history. It pays minimum wage, but it's enough to cover my therapy copays and contribute a little to my mom's utilities. David got engaged last month. I saw the announcement on a mutual friend's Instagram before I deleted my account. She's beautiful in a way I never was, open-faced and uncomplicated. He looks happy. I hope he is. I'm telling this story now because yesterday my therapist asked me what I would say to David if I could. I realized I didn't want to apologize. I wanted to explain. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't evil, just broken. But that's the same justification I've been using all along, isn't it? The text I sent Marcus while David was inside me said, "You don't get to be happy when I'm still ruined." Marcus never responded. He didn't need to. He'd already won by moving on. I keep thinking about what David said that night: "You're a monster." Maybe I am. Maybe monsters are just people who got so lost in their pain they forgot how to be human. So here's my confession, the one I started with. I texted my ex while my boyfriend was inside me, and everyone thinks I was being cruel. What they don't understand is that cruelty was never the point. The point was that I was so desperate to feel powerful, to feel anything other than the victim, that I destroyed the one good thing in my life to prove I still had control. I don't know if that makes me better or worse than you think. I don't know if I'm the villain or just broken. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust myself again, let alone anyone else. But I do know this: the next time someone tells you they're being stalked, ask more questions. The next time you see a woman spiraling, don't just assume she's crazy. And the next time you're tempted to judge the cautionary tale, remember that she was probably telling herself a story where she was the hero, right up until the moment she realized she was the villain. I'm still telling myself stories. But now, at least, I know they're stories. That's got to count for something, right? Tell me, am I the villain or am I just broken? Because I still don't know the difference.